In Pokémon, forests have always been home to mystery, ever since our very first steps into Viridian Forest, which, after the warm welcome, was designed to be the player's first encounter with just how hostile and enigmatic that world could be. But there's one forest in the series so deeply shrouded in mystery that even the locals feel there's something off about it. Pattern Bush. The moment we step inside, we can already notice how the grass grows in strange, irregular patches, unsettlingly different from every other forest in the franchise. But it's from a bird's eye view that just how unnatural those patterns really are becomes clear. They almost look like drawings left behind by someone or something trying to send a message. The NPCs living nearby don't ignore it either, acting strangely aware of their surroundings. One wonders why the grass refuses to grow in certain places. Another says the patterns remind him of his grandfather's clothes. And another simply mentions that he likes coming here to look at the stars. Could Pattern Bush have been inspired by the Nazca lines, believed by many to have served as a gigantic astronomical map? Nearby lies the Altering Cave, which, despite normally being inhabited only by Zubat, can mysteriously contain Pokémon that seem to appear out of nowhere. So it wouldn't be surprising if there was something supernatural hidden in that corner of the Pokémon world. If you count the grass tiles, there are exactly 386 of them, the same number of Pokémon in that generation's national Pokédex. Some fans have gone even further, suggesting that Pattern Bush might actually be based on the circuit board found inside the original Pokémon Red and Green cartridges, especially when you realize that this is the only place in the Pokémon world inhabited exclusively by bug-type Pokémon. Near there, on neighboring Seven Island, we find another secret that can only be seen from above. Trainer Tower, a place that hosts one of the most unique challenges in the series. Instead of rewarding your total number of victories, it judges you by the speed at which you clear it. And ever since I was a kid, I've always thought, wouldn't this have fit perfectly as just another facility in the Battle Frontier? Especially with that strange NPC standing on the rooftop. A unique sprite that isn't used anywhere else in the game, but I've always felt there was something oddly intimidating about him. An almost ominous presence that reminds me of the Frontier Brains. And if we return to an aerial view of Trainer Tower, we notice something very strange. A huge stretch of inaccessible ocean surrounding the area. That's unusual for these games, which normally leave just a small buffer of unused tiles so the player never reaches the edge of the map. But this enormous ocean, extending far beyond the player's field of view, really gives the impression that something was originally planned for that part of the map on the last island in the game, and was eventually removed. Was Trainer Tower really supposed to be the only attraction there? Could Seven Island have originally been planned as the home of the Battle Frontier, only for the idea to be scrapped at the last minute and saved for Pokémon Emerald instead? That would fit surprisingly well with Seven Island's slogan, the Isle of Endless Adventures. Be that as it may, one thing that caught everyone's attention is that this was the first time we could battle in-game trainers who owned shiny Pokémon. Not random encounters like the ones you can occasionally see in the Battle Frontier, but shinies, deliberately assigned to specific trainers. Why those trainers in particular? Well, I suppose the developers simply thought it would be fun, and a good way to show new players that these rare anomalies existed, sparking their curiosity just like the Red Gyarados did back in Generation 2. But you know I like filling in these gaps with theories to keep the fantasy alive. In contrast to the traditional way of life and slow pace that prevail throughout the rest of the archipelago, Seven Island is the only one that feels competitive. Savole Canyon is packed with powerful trainers, and via Mystery Gift, exceptional trainers could even visit the mysterious House of Boxes. It really feels like a place where trainers from all over the world come to test themselves. So maybe those shiny Pokémon actually represent different shiny hunting methods from the regions those trainers trainers come from. The fisherman seeking could reference chain fishing in Kalos, one of the twins Espeon. Maybe they use their twin telepathy to reset their games in perfect sync, reaching incredible speeds until they finally found a rare shiny Eevee. As for the last one, Meowth, a few ideas come to mind, but the simplest explanation is that it belongs to a thief. So perhaps it was stolen from another trainer, given just how valuable shinies are. But in Kalos, far from the bright lights of Lumiose City, a small village hides a mystery that is rarely talked about. In Lumiose City, location of the fairy-type gym, there is a clock with 13 hours instead of 12, a secret related precisely to the days when people believed in fairy tales, the witching hour. In various folklore, there is a brief period of time, just a few seconds around midnight, when strange things happen, according to the eyes of normal people. However, for magical creatures and a chosen few with enough sensitivity, those few seconds are perceived as a whole hour, the 13th hour, the witching hour, in which our mundane world and the one of magical creatures are intertwined. According to legends, if you are one of the chosen few who have been invited to such a meeting, you would experience an increase in your abilities and perception. At this time, encounters with mythical creatures would not take long to happen, and unthinkable barriers would begin to vanish. What does this have to do with Pokémon, and this city in particular though? Well, as the city with the first fairy-type gym in the series, the atmosphere is definitely unlike anything we have experienced before. Something about its aesthetics and the talks with its citizens feels unreal. In the gym, they move you from one side to the other in something similar to a dollhouse, and the eyes of the leader and other characters seem to reflect something that others don't see. Could it be that in this spot of Kalos, this clash of the two worlds is particularly powerful, attracting many people capable of experiencing the 13th hour, for whom this strange clock in the middle of the city would be useful? Now, on Sinnoh's Route 217, in the worst of the blizzard and with the snow at navel height, we find a small house where we can take a break. The only person inside is a woman who tells us, "A person, a rare sight. Thank you for visiting. A gift," and gives us the spell tag, an object that within the canon of the game boosts the power of ghost type moves. But perhaps this is a more literal spell, because if we go back to the house, there's no one inside. The spell tag is called Ofuda in Japanese, a talisman that is placed to seek protection, but in the game is a cursed Ofuda, looking for the opposite, to hurt the wearer, thus increasing the evil power of ghosts. The characters around tell us about possible hauntings in the area, and judging by her characteristics, it's clear that this woman was, in fact, a Frostlass, a female ghost Pokemon who harbors a great resentment towards humans due to her past life. She appears in the icy mountains where she died, charming lost travelers with her false hospitality in order to complete her revenge. If Frostlass considers the prey attractive, in other words, if it resembles the lover who betrayed her and for whom she lost her life, she freezes it in the cruelest and most painful way possible to use it as a decorative object forever and ever. But maybe she sees an unexpected kindness in the player's eyes. Either way, she spares your life, leaving you with a twisted little gift that will make misfortune follow you until seeing the sun shine again is a distant dream. Those of you who have played the 3rd generation games and traveled around Hoenn probably remember New Mauville. At first glance, it's an old power plant supplying the region, and we only visited to deactivate the overheated generator at Watson's request. But after leaving the place, we cannot help but be left with a bitter aftertaste and many doubts. If it's just a power plant, what is it doing there? In a deliberately hidden basement, under a bridge, and behind a key that only the gym leader has? Why such distressing and depressing music, which seems to scream helplessness and despair? Perhaps its name, New Mauville, gives us clues of a place with much deeper implications than we thought. In the remakes, after entering, we can see a part of the site that was not visible in the original games, a blocked entry that implies that there are more lower floors. And indeed, Watson confesses that beyond the generator floor, the site is no less than 69 floors deep, a colossal construction that obviously doesn't make sense as a normal power plant, even if it were to end up being used for that purpose. New Mauville is literally that, a new Mauville City that was built as an underground bunker intended to house all the city's inhabitants in an emergency that someone apparently foresaw. The new city would seek to save as many lives as possible down there, but they had to get supplies and energy from somewhere, right? In the remakes, the abandoned ship, a passenger ship that was wrecked for unknown reasons, was replaced with Sea Mauville, another old power plant that was precisely going to supply New Mauville in the most terrible way possible. In the middle of the sea, far from prying eyes, they were going to obtain that infinite energy using the Pokemon's life force as a source. The remnants, fragments of the past that we find in its ruins, are each more disturbing than the last. Who would be the chosen ones to survive the end of the world? What event would lead to this cataclysm? And who was the one that predicted it? What changed to make them decide to terminate it and throw away such a colossal investment? There are still many questions left in this story, but it's clear that in the seemingly innocent Pokemon stories, there is a place reserved for darkness. Mount Silver, site of the ultimate fight and one of the most iconic moments of the series, home to powerful Pokemon and countless dangers, deserted except for a select few. The tension is noticeable in the atmosphere, and even its music has a certain despair and loneliness that makes the feeling even more serious. I think it's not a coincidence that so many of the classic horror stories of the series have this place as setting. Its atmosphere invites that, perhaps more intentionally than we thought. The leaked gold and silver beta reveal a multitude of locations that would not be in the final versions. One of them would be right in the foothills of Mount Silver. The small route we would see in the final games was to be a large forest, the largest in the entire game. There doesn't seem to be anything special about it, at least not enough to consider changing it. But if we look at its labyrinthine structure, we realize the dark meaning that this place was going to have. Mount Silver is based on Mount Fuji. In fact, in the beta, it even had that name, but the forest before it corresponds geographically and was inspired by Aokigahara, the suicide forest, where many people in the country go to take their own lives. Although access is allowed, the site is plagued by ominous warning signs dedicated to encouraging people thinking of doing so to seek help. Apart from the fact that such an inspiration is far from appropriate, the labyrinthine nature of the place, the dark music, and the abundance of tall grass with powerful Pokemon were going to make this a tortuous place to go through. Although all of this was ultimately locked away in the sands of time, Mount Silver would remain the scene of many mysterious tales, stories, and legends. But no matter how lost we are in the fog, there is always hope to see the sky again and the beautiful diamond dust. But we couldn't end a video about the series' most mysterious places without venturing into the ruins of Alph, home of the Unown, who, for many players at the time, were something of a disappointment. The mystique surrounding their discovery, the way you're made to solve numerous puzzles to gradually unlock all their forms, only for it to never lead to a special event or encounter, nor reveal anything concrete about their true nature. But as the years went by, we came to understand that leaving that door open was intentional. The whole point of these creatures was to make us ask questions. Questions that would allow us to learn about the Pokemon world for ourselves. After all, they are letters, the very element that writes this story. The code beneath the game's programming, the very fabric of reality. the way knowledge is passed on, just as the humans of the Pokémon world develop their own writing systems based on these beans. But one of the few things the games tell us directly about them comes from the inscriptions inside the secret chambers in Gen 2. One of them, in the Aerodactyl chamber, tells us that the clan who carved those words devoted themselves to building statues. Those statues, which we see throughout the ruins of Alph, depict Rhydon, and would eventually spread across the Pokémon world as the universal symbol of Pokémon battles. But more importantly, Rhydon was the very first Pokémon ever designed, the purest essence of what a pocket monster is. So perhaps, once again, the people who first began carving those statues did so to pass on to future generations the knowledge they had received from the unknown. Perhaps, just as we eventually learned through interviews and leaks that Rhydon was designed first, the earliest civilizations of the Pokémon world learned from the unknown about Rhydon's importance as the purest embodiment of the pocket monster archetype, breaking the fourth wall. Another mystery of the ruins of Alph is the strange frequencies that can be heard on the Pokégear radio when you try tuning it there. The interference, seemingly caused by the instability of space-time between our dimension and that of the unknown, bears a striking resemblance to the sound of the Azure Flute introduced years later, an incredible piece of foreshadowing that reinforces their connection to the creation of the world. But even more strangely, it also faintly resembles Ho-Oh's cry, distorted almost beyond recognition. Ho-Oh is, in fact, one of the 4 Pokémon chosen for the puzzles created by the civilization that built the ruins, the only non-fossil Pokémon among them, and the father of Suicune, whom the unknown pursue, or perhaps even protect, during the opening of Pokémon Crystal. Could Ho-Oh also have some kind of connection to the unknown, to Arceus, and a far greater role in the creation of the Pokémon world than we ever imagined? By this point, I think you understand just how far the mystery of these Pokémon goes, how it's far more powerful than any simple event they could ever have been given, because we continue learning more and more about this world through them. That's exactly what we've been doing in this Pokémon Curiosity series on the channel, exploring the fascinating mysteries hidden throughout the Pokémon world. If you're still hungry for more, be sure to check out the rest of the mystery videos, and subscribe and follow me on social media so you don't miss what's coming next. Take care!